2 years ago, representatives from 195 countries met to draft the Paris Climate Agreement, committing to reduce their output of planet-warming greenhouse gas emissions to help stave off the worst effects of climate change. And this week, those same countries came together again, this time in Bonn, Germany, to discuss actually implementing the accord.
David Rain is the Director of Environmental Studies at George Washington University.
David, good to see you. So the conference wrapped up Friday. What exactly was on the agenda here? Because back in Paris, they came up kind of with an agreement to have an agreement, but didn't flesh out many details.
Well, the idea was to set individual timetables and targets individually by country, and that was something that the U.S. could, at the time, readily agree to. The U.S. is the one country that's not keeping to that. Trump announced that he was going to pull out of that. So that's thrown a little bit of a monkey wrench into the works, but all the other countries have gotten together. They agreed, among other things, to 15 countries, I believe, agreed to limit coal use, including Canada and the UK. That doesn't include Germany, China, or the US. There's also a lot of individual work with different countries to make sure that their timetables are realistic.
David, you mentioned those timetables and targets. How far are countries from meeting their targets?
Most of them are quite far away. Climate scientists tell us that we need to hit peak carbon well before the targets that have been set, ideally in about 20 years. And from then on, have our production of carbon, which can be carbon dioxide or methane or other greenhouse gases, we need to have that every 10 years. So we need to institute a rapid drawdown in carbon production, and that is not realistic. That is not actually practical given existing technologies. But countries are pushing ahead. China has pledged to become hit peak carbon by 2030. They're going to phase out gasoline-powered vehicles. They're really surging ahead and taking a leadership role here.
Okay, yeah, so China takes a lead on some things, but as you mentioned, not on coal, and coal is the real problem with China. We have the U.S. at least threatening to back out entirely. We don't have a single developed country on a path to meet their targets. And so the question has to arise, is this whole process doomed? Has it already failed? Do we need to start thinking about this in a new way? Is it realistic?
Well, it's not realistic according to climate scientists. We really need to be cutting down much faster. And we also want to keep economic production up. Last year, for the first time, the world has been able to decouple economic productivity from carbon production. Ordinarily, those go side by side. Really, the story of our civilization is about producing greenhouse gases. There needs to be a very rapid change over the next few years, and that's going to really require a lot of political will, more than we have so far. Even with the leadership that's shown by a number of different countries, we still have a long ways to go.
And David, as Brooke was mentioning, President Trump has pledged to pull out of the Paris Agreement, and that's supposed to be by 2020 or after. What is the U.S. even doing in Bonn?
Well, there was a group of industry reps there. There was a smaller U.S. presence. There was a showcase of gas liquefaction, nuclear power, some of the hand-picked administration favorites, and there was a 30-minute demonstration in the auditorium where this presentation was going on the part of indigenous peoples who are protesting the U.S. presence. There was also an unofficial U.S. delegation, which included Al Gore and a number of other prominent people. Al Gore was quoted as saying, you know, if Trump is not reelected in 2020, then the U.S. could still get on board with a Paris agreement. We have about 30 days after that election. I think the election's November 3rd, and the day that the agreement would take effect would be November 4th.
Okay. Trump has said that he might renegotiate the agreement, or he might stay in it if a renegotiation happened. Is there a chance that could happen?
Well, that's nonsensical, because the U.S. has decided on its own timetables to meet that, and these are very steep ones. We would have to go to, you know, a mostly electric fleet, really retrofit buildings, do a lot to, say, phase out coal-fired power plants in order to meet our timetables. It's really a long reach. And so to say that they're going to renegotiate, that's really, we need to renegotiate it with ourselves to see whether these are things that we can meet.
David Rain, thanks for your insights.
Thank you.